Well, Brendan Schaub is out because he cannot literally speak. I listened to him on Rogan, and he was like, the whole time. And now apparently he can't do anything because I've never lost my voice. I have a powerful voice.
You know what we say in the SEAL teams, right, Bryan?
What's that?
Weak genes.
Weak genes, Kaj Larsen. It's funny because you are somewhat metro. I met you. Well, what's funny is I met you with a bunch of dudes at a dinner, and every guy looks exactly the same. You look like them, except for you're just a little bigger. Like when you got up, I went, he's got big hands and he looks athletic. Like you were just a little more muscular. Like all those guys were in shape, but they're all 160 pounds. And then you got up and I went, this dude looks like an intellectual. He's got long hair. He looks kind of like, and then he's got fucking, but he's built. Like what? Oh, he must lift weights. Maybe he's got good genetics. And then I go, where'd you go to school? Oh, I went to the Naval Academy. Oh, and you were in the Navy? What did you do in the Navy? I was in the teams.
Yeah.
For how long? 14 years? Wait. So I'm talking to a dude who's in the SEALs. I never would have thought you were a Navy SEAL. You could not be less. You do look physically sound, but you don't behave in any way that way.
Dude, hiding in plain sight. This is like an essential life skill.
You're a quiet assassin, dude. And then on top of that, you're a war correspondent. You embedded yourself with Boko Haram, which I want to get into all this shit.
Yeah. Originally, I wanted to call that piece Boko Loco, but it didn't fly on the YouTube.
Yeah, that didn't. But I mean, how did you get? First of all, you're an American. Here's the problem: you're an American operative, an operator. When you're a Navy SEAL and you've been there as long as you have, you probably were involved in the killing of Muslims or people who were quote unquote terrorists or whatever. And so now this ex-Navy SEAL gets in with Boko Haram? How the fuck?
Well, it's kind of a wild
let's
story.
explain who Boko Haram is. Boko Haram, I believe Haram in Arabic means bad. Like, yeah, Haram, they would say. And Boko Haram is essentially, it's a terrorist, a self-identified terrorist group or self-identified Islamic State group in Nigeria or in the surrounding areas that basically believes that all Western influence and culture is haram, is bad.
Yeah,
right?
So haram, probably a more literal translation, would be forbidden. Mm-hmm. And Boko actually means book in a very literal translation, but that's not really what Boko Haram means. It really means like the wrong type of education. So what they're trying to do is a story that's become all too familiar in the global war on terror, is that they were trying to establish a caliphate that promoted their views and ideology in the northern part of Nigeria. Why Nigeria is so interesting, what most people don't realize, is that there are 12 states in Nigeria that have adopted Sharia law, right?
Wow.
So, Nigeria is this very bifurcated society, split between Muslims and Christians.
Igbo and Yoruba mostly, or Hausa?
A lot of Hausa in the north, right? So there's this geographic, spread out there, whereas the north is very, very Islamic and the south is very Christian. Now, the south has its own conflict that's been raging for years in the Niger River Delta, but as of late, the north has emerged out of this conflict that has to do with Boko Haram and with Islamic ideology. And while the predominant language there is Hausa, a lot of the Boko Haram guys don't even speak Hausa. So Hausa is the unofficial official language of northern Nigeria in the kind of Islamic component of the country. But a lot of these Boko guys, they speak Fulani, which is like one of the languages of the tribes in northern Nigeria in Borno State. And so they're effectively illiterate in their own country even because they don't speak Hausa.
And by the way, oil rich.
Oil rich in the south, but part of the politics of Nigeria is that, like many other places in the world, those gains haven't been realized by the northern half of the country. Mm-hmm. So the northern half of the country is more impoverished, where the southern half, oil rich with, Exxon and all of this stuff, has and Nigeria is crazy. Like, it's a place, the more time I spend there, one of those places in the world where the more time I spend there, the less I understand it.
Really?
You'll be in Lagos, which is this mega city with 20 million people, where every square inch is occupied by someone. And at the same time, you'll head out to, the ocean there. There's a little island where people surf, like I surfed in, southern Nigeria. But there's like oil tankers on the beach, and it's very like post-apocalyptic looking. And then you'll have like rich Nigerian dudes driving Bentleys into the ocean for fun.
What?
Right? Yeah, they'll be rolling a Rolls Royce. Like, so there's this like incredible inequality, like you see in much of Africa.
Yeah.
So incredible poverty, incredible affluence. But the North is a mess, man.
It's a mess.
It's an utter disaster.
So
14 people killed in a suicide bombing last week. So that conflict continues to rage.
as a former SEAL, as a guy who was, I know a little bit about you. You were involved in things that, you know, I mean,
I've been at the pointy end of the spear.
You've been at the pointy end of the spear. You know, military people usually arrive at military options, but I don't know how well that's working. What do we do?
Yeah, well, we're right in it. It's probably one of the more fundamentally important questions, and you know, for me, as you know, spending the last 2 decades in service and thinking about these issues a lot and covering them, you know, serving in uniform.
He also went to
downrange.
Harvard, ladies and gentlemen.
Harvard.
He also went to fucking Harvard. Wow. Any more questions? Yeah, grad school. All right, so shut up. Now open your ears and listen.
No, there are no real solutions. It appears that a lot of the kinetic solutions, it's like, I'll talk about someone a lot smarter than me who didn't go to Harvard, which is General Stan McChrystal, who's a great American. And he famously said...
He was the head of JSOC. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And, you know, Stan McChrystal famously said, like, we can't shoot our way out of this problem.
Right.
Meaning, like, you can put a bunch of pipe hitters, like me and my boys, downrange all day long, and we can do a ton of killing. But at the end of the day, these are not purely kinetic solutions.
Correct.
And we have to do the non-sexy stuff, the state building, the intervention, the like building infrastructure and rule of law, right?
Yeah,
you know,
man.
I spent a lot of time in Africa, and this is like the fundamental problem there is lack of governance.
So you're with Vice, and you decide, I'm going to go embed myself with Boko Haram. How the hell does an ex-Navy SEAL, or maybe even a current Navy SEAL, get in with those guys and not get beheaded?
Yeah. So
The fuck?
this story is actually like pretty nuts. It's like, do you ever have those moments in your life where like everything you've done kind of coagulates and comes together, like you're using all the tools in your toolkit, right?
Yeah.
This was one of those moments. So, you know, the long story short is when I got off active duty, I went to graduate school, and it was pre-GI Bill.
You studied what?
I studied public policy and international relations, national security policy, you know, stuff in my wheelhouse, in my comfort zone.
Important if you want to work for the CIA, etc.
No, it's more like...
I'm not saying anything, bro.
It's more like I had just spent like, you know, 5 years downrange being the instrument of those kind of policies. And I wanted to have a seat at the table eventually on the other side, asking the kind of questions that you just asked me. So I'm there, I'm at Harvard. It's expensive, as you might imagine, you know, coming off a Navy lieutenant salary. And so part of the way I offset my tuition is by doing this war correspondent work while I was in school. So Christmas in Afghanistan, spring break Cambodia, summer in Somalia, like
Damn.
all the good stuff, right?
Damn.
Yeah. So I made these, you know, mini documentaries. I was doing correspondent work, and that kind of launched my, you know, I traded my gun for a camera, but that was the mechanism that got me there. It was all to pay for the cost of graduate.
How did you make inroads into a group like Boko Haram?
Yeah, so getting to Boko Haram.
And by the way, Somalia is no joke either.
Yeah, I was. Mogadishu is.
You know
one of
your
the wildest
Africa.
places in the planet. Yeah, West and East Africa. You know, so
A, man.
get around. But you know, I also, you know, I'll get back to Boko Haram, but I was deployed there quite a bunch. I had the privilege of being what's called a plank owner in the Navy. When you stand up a new unit, they call you a plank owner. You get like a paddle and a plaque and shit like that you can put on your wall. So I was a plank owner at the reserve component for Naval Special Warfare of SOC Africa. It's a lot of acronyms, but like essentially I helped stand up the Africa Special Operations Unit for the SEAL teams. So for many years in my reserve capacity, I was very Africa-centric in my focus.
Yeah.
So it was on my radar. I was thinking about it. I was watching.
You know you have an intellectual's voice. Like it's a little nasally.
I'll take it.
I love. You're such a walking contradiction. Like I really appreciate it because if I was listening to you, you sound like you sound like you're a computer guy. Doesn't he? He's got a little bit of he's kind of like his voice is up here, you know? That's a guy just as somebody who studies.
I'll take that.
Jocko Willick. Jocko Willick's got this, you know, it's just fucking great.
Jocko Willick, I brought, look, Jocko,
look at that!
Channel our inner Jocko. I brought this. Feels like a commercial.
Jocko White Tea.
Yeah.
Is that his company?
Yeah, it's Jocko. He sent me a couple cases. Jocko is my first jiu-jitsu coach.
Get the fuck out.
Yeah. So he sent me. He's like pimping this.
Jocko.
This tea.
Get Jocko Tea, you bastards.
Yeah.
We got to get him on the podcast.
Jocko is he's the best. Like Jocko is speaking of computers.
Get after it.
You remember this old computer term, WYSIWYG, like from the early days of computing? Like what you see is what you get. That's Jocko. He is like what you see is what he's unadulterated. Like he is who he is.
His face, everything else is just warrior. I'm sorry to interrupt. I just had to say that. Keep going.
So me and my nasally voice, we started doing all this correspondent work around the world, which is funny. You know, hey, look, I got a face for TV and a voice for radio. That's what I'm going with.
There you go,
okay,
baby. There you go. It all
it's
works.
better than the inverse.
It all works, dude. I'm just impressed. I really am.
So I went from this obscure little television network called Current TV, where I kind of cut my chops, and then I was war correspondent at CNN, both domestic and international. And then I moved over. I was poached by Vice, by Shane Smith at Vice, and I worked on the HBO show there, and I did a bunch of work that I'm super proud of. And one of those pieces was Boko Haram. And the way I got there was really strange. From the old days, I knew a bunch of guys who were, we say private military contractors, pejoratively you'd say mercenaries, a bunch of like mercenaries from the old days who had been contracted by the Nigerian government. President Goodluck Jonathan paid him, many millions of dollars to fight the war against Boko Haram.
To kill his enemies, to kill his political enemies. This is a problem this is a problem right now. In the Middle East as well. I have a big problem with this because governments that are oppressive are hiring American special forces guys who really understand how to kill and organize, and they're killing. And I don't care what anybody says. I'm just too cynical. This is people in power using American firepower and expertise to kill their political enemies. That's what it feels like. And there's been a lot of articles written about it, right?
Well, I got a buddy locked up in Serbia right now. A couple dudes just got rolled up in Haiti, which would underscore your point.
Yep.
But on the African continent, there is a long tradition of using private military contractors to wage war.
Yes,
and in fact, the dudes who I was over there in Nigeria with were the old executive outcomes guys that were contracted to win the war in Sierra Leone, all that Blood Diamond stuff. So these are the dudes who were the inspiration for the Blood Diamond guys.
Yeah, I followed that very closely.
Right. Yeah. So I'm not talking like the same company. I'm talking literally the same dudes.
The same
so I
guys,
showed
the South African mercenaries, those guys.
So they're all old. The guy I flew with in the Mi-17 Hind helicopter is like one of the most interesting dudes when I was over there. One of the most interesting dudes in the world. He, teaches executives how to fly helicopters in South Africa on his downtime, and then he imported MiGs. Sorry, not MiGs. He imported Hind helicopters to Africa and was fighting on the ground against Boko Haram under contract with, But this is all like super shady. I'm making it sound legit. No, this is like as shady as it gets.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
There's that much money in war.
Totally.
And getting rid of your political enemies, it becomes a business.
Totally. And for good luck, Jonathan, like we don't have to, like we've already gone way down the rabbit hole of Nigerian politics, but he had an election coming up. And he was perceived as having not done enough to fight the Boko Haram insurgency.
After they kidnapped all those schoolgirls.
Right. And that's how most people know it, the Chibok girls. So Boko Haram kidnaps, nobody had heard of this like
obscure Did they ever find those
conflict.
Girls? Did those girls return to their families?
I mean, we spent a lot of time looking for them when we were really close. What happened ultimately is they've returned about half of them. Some were missing. There's like there's no clean answer. They return them in like a couple at a time, like a dozen here, 20 there. Most of them by this point had been married to Boko Haram fighters, and many of them were like
and now have kids with them, and now
so
they have a husband.
When I went back to Nigeria, they're doing like this crazy thing, which are these reintegration academies for the women who had been captives of Boko Haram, but it's a very like blurry line as to like how they felt and where they wanted to be. As you can imagine, like they,
they're young girls,
16 years old.
You get married to some,
you have two babies now, and you've been living.
You adapt because women have had to do that forever. You know, it's like.
And total like side note, I talk about this in my work a lot. Is the disproportionate effect and impact of violence upon women in these conflict societies.
Nuts.
And Nigeria is the classic case study in it.
Yeah, they bear the brunt, man.
So anyways, I knew these dudes from the old days, from the gunslinging days, and they had called me up and said they were going to do this thing. And I just said, like, are you amenable to having me come over? And he's, I don't know if the boys will like this. They're like pretty camera shy. What we're doing is in an incredibly like gray area of legality, even though it's at this point basically traditional on the African continent. But no, it's against the law in South Africa. All of these guys, to a large degree, are former SANDF, South African National Defense Force guys. So I went over there. I brought a cameraman. Didn't pull out a camera for the longest time, and I just operated with them. Just went out, like kind of earned their trust, went on patrol with them. And then after a period of time, like they got comfortable that I wasn't there to burn them. And they allowed me to film a little bit. From there, basically at some point my cameraman went home. It was his first time deployed to a war zone, did a fantastic job. But there was a night where we were sleeping in one of the tents, and the Boko Haram guys started like lobbing some mortars into the camp. And, you know,
because you're embedded at this point with guys who are being paid to kill Boko Haram.
Yeah, at this point. And then, but like, you know, whatever, mortars like are very indiscriminate fire, very inaccurate. So the way he describes it is that I just like kind of rolled over on my vest and like went back to sleep. And he was like, fuck this, like I'm tapping out, you know. But he did an awesome job. But so then at one point I was there by myself, and I had to film myself, you know, do everything. It was basically like the ultimate selfie movie, right? Like, so from there, once I had the trust of the PMCs, of the private military contractors, and was going out on missions with them, that allowed me to leapfrog to the very front lines and embed myself with the Nigerian army, with the very most fringe FOB-y portion of...
FOB meaning forward operating base for you guys.
Right. Because you have to remember, the reason I was the only journalist there is that the Nigerian government had banned journalists from these 3 states. So no journalists were allowed there. In fact, 2 Al Jazeera guys got arrested. They were still in prison when I was there, right? So this is why
Nigerian prisons must be super comfy.
Oh, they're amazing.
Yeah. That's
pretty much time. Maybe not 5-star, definitely 4-star.
No, that's where I want to be.
Yeah.
From the front lines fighting Boko Haram, then to a Nigerian prison. That sounds great.
I spent a couple nights in a jail cell in Djibouti with one of my fellow correspondents.
Where's Djibouti? Tell him.
Djibouti is in East Africa, kind of a city-state close to Somalia. The big joke like there, which got old really quick, was like, Djibouti sucks my booty. Like it was like the worst place in the world.
In Djibouti. There's just no, you know, you're dealing with I guess you're at the whim of a warlord who happens to be running that area, a fiefdom.
Yeah. I mean, like jail sucks in general, right? Like you don't want
to... Djibouti.
That
sucks your booty.
You really do not want to spend a night at the Gray Bar Hilton there, you know. But so anyways,
now
from
you're
there,
embedded with the Nigerian.
I was
army.
able to, because they assumed that I was one of the white guys. I was dressed like
and
one of the guys.
And all those guys that you were with who were fighting Boko Haram, the Good Luck Jonathan, the African Defense Force, they're all white.
Actually, they were a mix. They were a mix. There was about 40 white guys. There was about 120 of us total. I think it was about like 40 white guys and about 80, 80 black guys. But they were South African black guys, not Nigerian. Very different. It was also interesting for me to watch those old Afrikaans guys and like culturally how they would interact. Like,
oh, they're Dutch.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's very different.
Yeah, and the hierarchy is alive and kicking. Like apartheid might be over, but like not in the ranks of those guys, right? It was fascinating to watch.
That's going to be the next. I really wonder about South Africa. I don't know how. You've got Julius Malema at the EFF who's saying we're going to take all the land.
Totally.
Land without compensation. So all the white, like 10% of the population, which is white, owns 80 or 90% of the land. That's not going to be sustainable. And you got these literal communists, actual Maoists, who are like, we're gonna take all the land. That worked so well in Venezuela, and it's worked so well in every other country. Let's see what happens. And Julius Malema, who's the head, who's a communications major and is dumb. He's a good statesman and speaker, but a complete fucking moron about that. Just has no experience in the world.
And the ANC is totally fucked up.
Well, they're just so
totally
corrupt.
Yeah.
The ANC is like, but we won't get into that. But that's a whole different thing. But so
I'm with all these dudes, and sidebar, like a bunch of those dudes got killed. Like the first run I went out on, like we had a blue on blue with a Nigerian unit, and Nigerian tank opened fire on our convoy with the white, killed 2 of the white guys. Like just a shell just ripped through our convoy.
Fuck.
Or we were just picking up pieces of them. So like this is like as in harm's way as it gets. So
because they mistook you guys for the enemy or what?
I mean,
you this was the Nigerian army that fired upon you.
Yeah, it's like classic. Yeah. One thing that was so interesting about going there to embed with those guys is that the battle space and the way we conduct warfare for us from the U.S. Special Operations community has evolved so much in the last 2 decades of war. Like, say what you want, like we have sharpened the knife.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And the way we do it with like air assets overhead, the way the battle space has evolved, the way the comms architecture has evolved is extraordinary. It is. It is.
You probably don't want to be a terrorist with an AK-47, fighting the JSOC.
Yeah, because the classic paradigm of asymmetric warfare doesn't work anymore because we're practicing asymmetric warfare at scale in this like orgy-esque dance of violence almost. Yeah. We have Italians, like an Italian JTAC with a NATO like C2 platform overhead, command and communications platform overhead with a Predator drone like being flown by a guy at Fallon, Nevada, right? You got like a Polish Grom guys or a Marine Corps QRF, quick reaction force in the background. In my platoon, I'd be having, in one ear, I'd be talking to like an Italian forward air controller and then the guys in the other ear, right? So it's like a multinational, complicated killing machine coming to bear on the enemy.
Jesus.
Like you can't imagine the sophistication that's happened over the last 2 decades of war.
And you're in a formation.
Incredible.
You're in a ragtag formation with it.
And here I am with a bunch of like bush fighters who like this is how they fought like warfare, jungle warfare 30 years ago in the bush.
Zimbabwe or Rhodesia.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so like, no knock on them. All of those guys were hard.
Yeah.
But it was a different style of warfare. It was an old school style of warfare. And, for me, even as an officer, as a SEAL officer, from a mission planning perspective, we're supposed to go out and then we had like a link up time, but there was no like secondary, tertiary comms options. And of course we were late because, no battle plan survives the first shot. So we were late for the link up with the Nigerians. There's no deconfliction, friend or foe, all of like these procedures that we've honed over the last couple years.
Some guy gets nervous and opens up with a tank.
And just starts firing on us, right? And so
Jesus.
The round comes in, rips through one of the vehicles that we had, kills 2 of the contractors. And then, look, the flip side of that is that like war is still about like individual courage and bravery. And from there, I saw the bravest thing I've ever seen in my life, which was one of the guys running out of the convoy and towards the Nigerian tank, jumping on the front of it, slapping it down and screaming like, "Stop fucking firing!" Right? Like wow. That's where you want that old school break glass in case of war kind of guy.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, the Afrikaan, like those Dutch dudes, like we were on safari, and this is in South Africa, and it's early in the morning, and my brother-in-law is a big, strong Swede, pro athlete, like not a pussy at all. My dad, ex-Marine, big guy, and then of course myself, the basically the man girl, and then everybody and the other people, dude. My dad was wearing a down jacket. I was wearing like 3 layers, and I was cold. And I took one of the blankets and put it on my legs because in the morning in Africa it's cold as shit, right? Mm-hmm. We're driving in a Jeep. The dude, the Afrikaans guy, the giant Dutchman, they're the Samoans of Europe. They're fucking huge. He's in shorts and a t-shirt and flip-flops. And at one point I looked at my father and go, how is this guy not cold? How is he not cold? I said, my brother-in-law who's from Sweden who can deal with the cold. I go, he's not cold. He goes, they were just shaking their head. I go, why are you not cold? And he goes, because it's not cold.
Yeah.
That's why.
Right.
Because it's not gold.
Because it's not.
That was it. Like they're a rough
That
cowboy
was
group.
these dudes. And, say what you want. And also remember, like, some of these guys are like 50, 50 plus years old. And they are out there in Borno State, in Maiduguri, like
they live for
going
it.
after Boko Haram.
They probably live for it. Once you're that close
Totally.
to the flame, you I'm sure you have some of that. There's that. I mean, come on. It's hard to, when you're living a civilian life and you're getting your coffee from a dude with a nose ring and everything is so safe. After you've lived that close to the flame, it must be very difficult because everything else is boring, right?
Well, it's not just that. I mean, I think you
Says
and I.
the stand-up comic.
Yeah. I don't know.
But
I think
for
we
real.
run into this shit just by like virtue of being here in this town all the time.
We've
I
touched
remember
on
when
this
I
together.
when I first arrived here, I was still driving my 97 4Runner, which is like the first car I had in the teams. Like, great car, still have it.
Yeah.
Right, it's my surf car. Throw my boards in the back, and I pulled up like on a date to meet a girl at Chateau Marmont, and like the valet gave me like so much shit. Like, basically wouldn't take my car
Of course.
or even talk to me. I didn't know anything. I didn't
You're
know like
shit.
the
You're
mores.
nothing.
Nothing. And
You're invisible.
I was like, motherfucker, I have killed better men than you. Like, you will take this car. So
Yes, when you need a guy like me to be like, hey, listen, let me explain to you who you're. Look at that. Look at this. So now so now you have this encounter with the Nigerian army. Let's keep going.
yeah. So basically, that got me to the front lines. The Nigerian army thought I was one of the mercenaries, and they were very deferential to them. That allowed me to bump to the front lines and spend a bunch of time, couple weeks on the very front lines where they were like trading shots, literal trench warfare, trading shots back and forth. So that's how I covered one side of the conflict, the kinetic military side. But then, as a journalist and a filmmaker, storyteller, policy guy, it was important for me to see the other side. So I did what we as journalists lean heavily on, which is we use a network of local fixers and connections that I had made on the ground to help me organize and arrange a meeting with some of the Boko Haram commanders. I did that. The negotiations were tense. The negotiations were tense both with Boko Haram, how we were gonna meet in a neutral location that was safe for them and safe for me. They were also tense, frankly, with HBO and with Vice and with the networks, because we were way out in uncharted waters here. Yeah. And credit to those guys, to the executives at Vice and HBO.
They're amazing.
At the end of the day, they were willing. The argument that convinced them wasn't that like, hey, I can handle this. I got a handshake deal with the embassy for a bunch of Marines on standby, because there was like a frogman working in the State Department at the embassy.
Yeah.
So like I had some friends, but I was still pretty far out there on my own. But none of those arguments convinced the executives at HBO. What convinced the executives at HBO to allow me to go meet with a Boko Haram commander secretly was that this is important for the world, and the risk was worth the reward, to hear a perspective
for them.
that nobody had ever seen
Good
before.
for them, and they're right.
Totally.
And they're right, because nobody ever done that.
Right.
And so, and I would imagine if they had found out that you had been ex-military, you could have been in danger?
Yeah, possibly. I mean,
Or not?
we
everybody's
used a
military
pretty
out
trusted
there.
source.
Okay.
We used a pretty trusted source. This woman, I was sort of a little bit relying on the fact that I'm even at
You're
that
going
time,
there with a camera.
Yeah. And that we use this woman who's often affectionately known as Mama Boko Haram to kind of negotiate and broker the meeting.
I mean, without getting anybody in trouble, if I were CIA, I would want, that's exactly how I would pose so I could get in from intel on Boko Haram.
And
But
the
I mean,
agency just pays people.
they just pay
It's
people.
simple. Yeah.
It's not-
Everybody
not-
thinks
know.
intelligence work
I
is
know.
this grand secret.
What are you going to do? Take
Yeah,
pictures with a small camera?
Yeah.
This is the guy.
Yeah. No, like my joke about case officers is like they need big biceps because they got to carry all those bags of cash around.
Yeah, that makes sense. So
I
how
love
long
my
were you?
brethren
How long were you
from the
there?
agency? So total, I went back and forth a couple times, but total, I was boots on the ground. I think close to 2 or 3 months.
Jesus.
Yeah, which again, credit, that's a hard thing to do in this like vicious, fast news cycle where people don't pay attention to Africa and care about Africa. To allow a correspondent to go downrange and spend that much time working on something.
Did you find that, like everything else, they were people and that they were probably fighting? Who's that really hot chick with a gun?
Do we have to visually describe this?
I mean, she's got...
That's a different conflict. Her name's Claire Ward. She was one of my cinematographers at Vice. Extraordinary...
looking
super. Yes, she's very beautiful, and she is also an awesome journalist.
What a badass.
She's a super badass.
Bring her up. I need more pictures of her,
Claire
please.
Ward? Is that it?
And she's actually living in East Africa right now. She's about to have her second baby, but she's an amazing journalist. When we were in Peru, that was a story on narco trafficking.
I mean, seriously, she's
we
a
almost
movie
got
star. Well, what the fuck's going on? Keep going.
Right?
What a badass.
I know.
No, I mean, I hate to take a...
This is why I don't work with her overseas anymore, because nobody pays attention to me.
Well, of course not. I mean, that's just, but I mean, good on her, man. I love somebody who's just a badass like that.
Claire's awesome. Super smart, great journalist, Canadian, fearless.
Yeah, obviously. Fearless. Obviously. That's the thing about doing what you did. I mean, that is a ballsy thing to do because it can go wrong in a heartbeat. And you were there for 3 months. What did you glean from that whole conflict? What did you come away with? Sad?
Super sad. I mean, some of those stories are horrific, gut-wrenching. I feel, I joke like, oh, I'm part Nigerian now. Yeah. And like here in the States, nobody knows me. But that video, those documentaries went crazy viral because even in the South, people are deathly afraid. Like, no, people are like, oh my God, you've been to Borno? Like, I would never go there. Those guys are crazy. They're so scared. So like, I'm a big deal in Nigeria, right? Everybody can recognize me because I showed them a war that even Nigerians hadn't seen. And so, so I feel very attached to Nigeria as a country. Even the current elections that are going on, I follow very closely.
You're rooting for the people.
Of course. And some of the stories in the Vice documentary for HBO, I interview this woman named Zainab, who was 16 years old, captured by Boko Haram, impregnated by a Boko Haram fighter, eventually returned to her village and was encouraged by all of the villagers to have an abortion, right? And she refused to. Because they didn't want a Boko baby in their village. Yeah. But she said, no. If I do that, like, then I'm just like those guys. Yeah. Right. And so imagine the courage and the will of a 16-year-old girl who's been raped and impregnated and kidnapped, right? To stand up to the social and cultural pressure of her entire village.
If she could handle that, she can handle anything.
That's real strength.
Like, people like that amaze me.
That's real courage.
We do live in a country where... everybody's sensibilities and feelings are so important. They don't know what the fuck they're talking. None of them have been through anything. And in a lot of ways, this is what Jonathan Haidt writes about in The Coddling of the American Mind. These college students, you have no idea what the fuck. You like when it comes to adversity, there are people out there. Having grown up overseas, I know that inherently. Having grown up in Pakistan and India and Lebanon and the Middle East, I saw it. I traveled to Africa. I traveled to communist China. I traveled to communist Russia. I saw it. I saw how a lot of people lived, and I saw how people didn't have anything. And so your feelings and your humanness and essence is not important. There's a fundamental difference between Americans a lot of times, especially privileged Americans, like the ones we find in our colleges, and everybody else is basically, look, I'm a tiny leaf on a huge tree. And Americans are brought up to believe that we are the tree. And that is a fundamental difference.
Well, this is, you and I have discussed quite a bit offline, how difficult it is sometimes to transition back from military service or from overseas. But I also believe that it's possible to gain incredible perspective from those experiences overseas and from combat experiences. And look, I think I grew from my combat experiences.
Made you more compassionate, didn't it?
Not only more compassionate, like more grateful. And like, it's not a movie, right? It's not a Hallmark movie with a perfect score where you come back and you have this grand epiphany. But in general, I think what it does is it brings life into more clear focus and makes you appreciate like all that good stuff. So, every day I'm alive is in the black, right? And so if I'm off, spearfishing or scuba diving or free diving or whatever, or having a good meal down there on Abbot Kinney, I think it's just like a touch sweeter because of our perspective of having been overseas.
I was never in the military, but I went to Afghanistan and did stand up for the guys for 2 weeks in 2008, I think. And I went through the hospital and I saw a little boy who had lost his legs in a landmine. And then we saw some other stuff. And then we had 4 pine boxes loaded at our feet in Kandahar, and they were 19-year-old Marines who'd been killed in a suicide bombing. Then we saw a ceremony for some of the fallen guys, and try keeping a dry eye, by the way. I'm not comfortable with emotions, but I was crying behind my fucking sunglasses, and I came back after this insane experience, which was just a great honor for me to do. And I was in a restaurant on Abbot Kinney, and I ordered the lamb, and the guy came over and apologized profusely because they'd run out of lamb. And I know this was a huge inconvenience for me. I know the 11-year-old or 4-year-old or whatever he was, because they don't have good nutrition, had lost his legs, but they didn't have my fucking lamb.
Right.
So I had the guy fired, obviously, and I was screaming, "Why me? Why me?" And I stormed out, and I'll never go back to that restaurant again. No, but it just puts everything in perspective. Look, as a kid, though, I always talk about this. I saw what advanced stage leprosy does to somebody's face. I saw all that shit as a kid. I saw what it was like to have groups of children come up and beg at your window. And I was in an air-conditioned car. That shit changes you. It fills you full of shame. It makes you kind of go, why did I get lucky? The fuck am I lucky for? And I know you've seen that and way more, and especially in the 2000s, which is kind of crazy, but it still exists, right?
Yeah, and I mean, that whatever. If I have like a positive kind of like generally buoyant disposition, it's because of exactly what you just described. Like I at least like have gained the perspective that I have been on the privileged end of the spectrum, and there's nothing like being overseas to kind of remember that. And this is not like about wrapping yourself in the flag or anything like that. Like it has nothing to do with it. Like you see, like you said, a little Afghan boy and like who stepped on a landmine and what his life is. It's also true in Cambodia. I did another piece for Vice HBO about landmines in Burma, and so I was with the Burmese rebel. So like the explosive remnants of war exist globally.
Everywhere. You also did something on extraordinary rendition.
I did.
Can you explain that? Because I've always been fascinated with it. Because let me give you my definition of extraordinary rendition, and then you can tell me if I'm correct.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't quite believe it. I believe that extraordinary rendition is when the CIA realizes that there is a high-value target, let's just say a terrorist, who's responsible for killing Americans or whatever. And we, with the help or not the help of the local authorities in that country, come in, grab that guy, throw a hood over his head, put him in an unmarked plane, and fly him to a country where the torture laws are kind of loose, like Poland or wherever it might be. They're allies. So if he accidentally gets electrodes put to his nuts, well, we didn't do it. Their people did it. Or let's just say there are a lot of Arab countries that don't have strict rules on torture or interrogation techniques. So am I right about that?
Yeah, I mean, look, one, that was like 95% like a perfect explicit description of what it is. In terms of, there's a small but important distinction in what you said is you use Poland as like a kind of off-the-cuff example. What happened in the Eastern European countries is a different type of rendition than the classic rendition which you're describing, which is a better, more precise example might be, say, fly someone off to Egypt and let the state security forces interrogate them.
They're a humane bunch.
Right. I just smashed that thing. Great. I got so excited.
Yeah, I know.
Taking out the mic.
Okay.
So that, prior to 9/11 and even post 9/11, that kind of extraordinary rendition was the kind of rendition that was the most commonplace. What happened post 9/11, which has been much revealed now, is that the CIA set up a series of secret black sites around the world in places like Thailand and Poland and Romania. And the distinction there is that these were prisons run by the CIA. And the interrogation programs known as the RDI program, the Rendition and Detention Interrogation Program, has the word rendition in it, but they were renditioning them to their own facilities as black sites co-located in foreign countries, but not with the cooperation of internal security services.
You'd rather be maybe with the CIA than in an Egyptian. I mean, because at least with the CIA, there are rules.
The extraordinary rendition practice that you've described has mostly stopped, right? And according to federal law.
It's un-American.
Right.
It's called being un-American, in my opinion.
So that really doesn't happen. What happened post 9/11 is that they brought all of that detention and interrogation in-house. And that was new territory for the agency. And they stood up this program and...
well, they didn't have that much experience, did they? I mean...
No, and this was the problem. So they're starting from scratch. They hired 2 CIA contractors. They're paid close to $80 million to design and implement the rendition, detention, interrogation program. Occurred in all these different spots around the world. The Senate got wind of it. There was this long Senate report that didn't name the contractors, used pseudonyms to name them, but described the entire program.
Contractors as in individuals or contractors as in companies?
It was one company, but it was basically 2 former Air Force psychologists who designed the program. Now, nobody really knew who these guys were, but I knew who they were. And so I revealed one of them to the world for the first time for a Vice documentary in this micro doc called The Architect, because he was the architect of the program. And I did it in kind of like a bizarre, weird way. He lives down in Tampa, where Special Operations Command is. So I went to visit my buddy Jim down in Tampa, and I interviewed him on a canoe in a lake surrounded by thousands of alligators.
Dude.
Because I thought it was a good metaphor for how he sees the world. It's so bizarre and so surreal. So here's Jim. And Jim personally waterboarded Khalid Sheikh Mohammed 183 times. So not only did he design the program...
183 times?
Not only did he design the program, not only did he profit from it, he also implemented it. And I don't mean any of this. Jim is a complicated character, and I consider him a friend, a real friend.
Well, I'm not. When we were in new territory,
right,
and everybody was terrified, and the CIA was the one. I always say this, like when the towers come down, or when a bomb explodes, or 100,000 Europeans or Americans or whoever are killed, or 200,000, whatever's possible with technology. What all of us do is we go. We got to get the bad guys, and we always know that we have guys who can do that, guys and gals, but probably a lot of guys. We know that. Well, we all go, where's Delta? Where's DevGru? Where are those guys? Where's CIA? All of us do that. We don't know how it works. It's almost like when you get cancer, and we go, are you going to a good doctor? There's a specialist. Go there. They'll save your life. We don't know how it happens, but we know that they're there. We have those men and women in white coats. It's the same idea. So that job, when you are improvising at the speed of life and people are dying and a lot of people could die and your margin for error is basically nil, you can't fuck up. You're going to do shit and by the way, invent a way to interrogate. Okay, here's $80 million. This is all fly by night shit. So I do forgive and understand the idea that there's a great deal of error that's going to happen along the way as we learn this stuff.
Totally. And for these guys, they were flying the airplane while they built it, right? They were figuring it out in real time. Yeah. And look, that doesn't excuse, for me, I very rarely place any blame at the feet of the individual operator on the ground, right? It's incumbent upon us as leaders and as policymakers to put safeguards on these kind of things.
But also to learn from the past, and also to learn. I have learned a lot from the Iraq invasion, which I was semi-approving of, because I was like, there'd be a lot of incentive for a state with that much money and that much military expertise and will to accidentally on purpose drop a nuclear weapon or weapon of mass destruction in someone's hands, Al-Qaeda's hands or whatever. I understood that. I understood that, like, making an example of a government, but then of course I was wrong in a lot of ways too, because I didn't, a lot of my friends who were liberal, quote unquote, and kind of left wing and were really against it, I was critical of, but I think they were right. I think, and it's okay. I mean, I've been wrong a lot in my life, but I do think it's very important that we really learn from these lessons, as opposed to what I think is really going on is that what we are learning also is that there's a lot of money in conflict and war, and let's just keep it going, man. And by the way, there are a lot of governments that want to stay in power, like Saudi Arabia and stuff, and they have to kill a journalist or maybe a lot of political enemies. Let's get some ex-SEAL guys to do it. We'll pay you a shitload of money, man. Hey, you're killing terrorists.
Yeah, and look, I think these are the most important and the most interesting questions of the last 2 decades. This is where I've spent the body of my civilian work, is in asking these questions. My history with the enhanced interrogation program, which was effectively created by Jim Mitchell, who I just talked about down in Florida. My history with that is I was the first person to be waterboarded on national TV.
Oh, shit.
It was like the assignment. It was when I was trying to pay for Harvard, and I was working at Al Gore's television network, Current TV, my first TV network, and I had this harebrained idea. Everybody was talking about waterboarding, and it was a debate within the annals of national security. You saw people opining about it.
Is it torture? Is it not torture?
That whole thing. John McCain went to war with the White House over this issue, right? And everybody's talking about it like nobody knew what it was. So I was like, well, I know what it was, or I know what it is.
You guys have to get waterboarded, don't you, sometimes?
I got waterboarded in SEER school.
My friend did that too. He was like, it's torture. He's a tough fucker. And he goes, to me, that was torture.
Like, have I told you, like, my experience with it the first go around?
No.
Is, they strapped me to that board, and you have this, like, backstory, cover story that you're supposed to kind of resist them extracting information. The whole school is designed to teach you to resist interrogation, right? You go there, right? And then, so anyways, they strapped me down to that water board, and they started putting the hose in my mouth or whatever, and then they like...
So explain what it is.
Yeah, so waterboarding is an interrogation. Just betrayed myself. It's an interrogation technique dating back to King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, when they tried to rid the Spanish, the peninsula of Moors and Jews and other undesirables. So it comes out of Middle Ages. Right. So it's really an interrogation technique using water and simulating drowning that dates back hundreds of years. And the history is fascinating.
Right.
Like the Nazis used it in World War II. We court-martialed Americans for using it in the Vietnam War.
I want to watch this, by the way. We have this?
Yeah.
Is the video actually out?
That's it.
Is that rare?
That's it. Yeah. There's me sucking water.
So go on.
So waterboarding is this technique that's gone for a long time. Its most modern incarnation was probably done by the Khmer Rouge during the Cambodian genocide. Yeah. And in fact, I got the idea for the story when I was on that spring break assignment on landmines, and I was at Tol Sling, which is a museum where the Khmer Rouge killed 20,000 Cambodians, and I saw a picture of waterboarding on the wall, and I saw this through line between all these nefarious regimes who had waterboarded, and then that we were waterboarding, right? So I pay this dude $1,000 to have myself waterboarded. He was a former SEER instructor, and we film it in this basement in Rhode Island because it was the closest place to Boston where I was living at the time, and we put it up, and it goes like pretty crazy because nobody had ever seen it. Although, funny little backstory, which I think you'll appreciate, I submitted it to the network, and then it goes into, as you know, the video then goes into post-production or whatever. And like 2 weeks later, they call me and they're like, "Hey, Kaj, we can't find the footage to go into edit of the waterboarding." And I was like, "Oh, I am not doing that shit again." Like, what do you mean you can't find the footage? Like, it turns out, to underscore that nobody really knew what it was, the guy who ingests the footage had seen the title Waterboarding, and he thought it was a new extreme sport like wakeboarding or something, so he had filed it under all the sports footage.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, and it was missing for like 2 weeks. And the piece, my most famous piece, that was the first time I was on national TV and all this stuff, almost didn't happen.
Oh, my God.
Because that
Let's
fuck up.
watch this. Let's watch this.
Oh, once it actually starts happening.
Is that you?
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah, what is that?
So part of the thing is they have to stuff a rag or a piece of parachute cloth. That's the most effective way in your mouth. That keeps you from spitting the water back up. And
now you're having water pushed down your nose?
Yeah, so they're holding my mouth so that I don't, miss the stream. It's more effective with a hose, or a bucket, although it's equally effective
Dude,
with a canteen.
You can't breathe right now.
Can't breathe, yeah. And you'll see it starts to get, you can tolerate it for a little bit, but you'll see me start to shake after a while.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah.
That's horrible. What we do to other human beings.
Yeah, and I was, at the time, keenly aware of the fact that my buddies were still downrange and overseas, and they, in all likelihood, could be captured. And it's possible that the only thing that prevented them from being subjected to torture was the fact that we had always held this very strong moral line that we do not torture.
100%. It's so important.
And so that's where I ultimately fell in the equation.
Placing the moral high ground.
So that was actually my professor, Alan Dershowitz. I interviewed him about it.
Oh, shit. That was your professor?
Yeah.
Doing it the way we do it, without accountability and with deniability.
So this actually goes on for...
I like Dershowitz. I think he's right.
Dersh is a straight shooter. He's a complicated guy, but he's always been super willing to engage on these issues whenever I've talked to him about it.
He's like, if we have to do it, fine, but have transparency.
That is what he says. That's literally what
he'll... If you really need torture, like if there's a guy who knows where a bomb is, then okay, but just who's doing it, and just know that we're doing it. Yeah,
his position is nuanced. He says at the very least, if we're going to engage in this behavior, we have to be completely transparent about it. Yeah. I think, so this really kicked off my long history.
How long did that last? That looks awful. I couldn't
23 minutes.
Dude. Oh, you were waterboarded for 23 minutes.
Yeah, because fuck them. Yeah.
How did you feel after that?
Yeah, I was all right. Like I recovered. Like it wasn't as bad as the first time, but it was bad.
23 fucking minutes.
Yeah, well, I kind of messed it up. Like honestly, like I should have had a safe word or something, but I didn't have like a good plan going in because I wanted it to be as authentic and realistic as possible. You could never simulate actually being captured, obviously, but I wanted it to be close.
Yeah.
So that people could at least have an informed debate about what we should be doing.
Yeah. I mean, listen, that's very powerful looking at that. Looking at that where you're tied up and that shit is, to me, is it torture or is it interrogation?
It's torture.
Yeah.
It's torture.
Yeah.
It's, even I'm not a lawyer, but like I had to dig deep enough into the legal infrastructure surrounding this for both this film, for the Architect film, and eventually for a scripted feature that was just made inspired by all this stuff. And the legal definition of torture is essentially pain equivalent to death, which is obviously very subjective.
Yeah.
But this is pretty damn close. You do think you're going to die.
Yeah. I kind of feel like the psychologists and the lawyers who are okaying this should be waterboarded so that they have an idea of what they're okaying. Not because they're bad people, but it might be nice to know a little bit about what you're actually saying is legal. Just to stay super honest, all of us. I mean,
yeah,
I know that's a gray area, but
look, these are tough questions.
Yeah,
is it even possible to conduct ethical warfare? That's a real question. My mom would say no.
That's a great question.
Right? My mom would say no. She doesn't believe in it. She doesn't believe in violence of any kind. She doesn't think it's possible. So here I am.
See, I do.
Me too.
Like, I mean, fascism was stopped by, 6 million Jews were slaughtered, and what stopped those guys was violence, was overwhelming violence. What essentially eradicated slavery in our country and actually the world in many cases was violence, was a war. So we can go on and on about that. And, I think communism in its forms was a very evil thing. And I think a market economy is better for people. And I think a lot of times that war was won with guns. I hate to say that.
No. First of all, I'm going to recruit you to the next family Thanksgiving because, like, I need more allies in this fight. Yeah. But this is what I tell my mom, who I love very dearly and I'm very close with. Sure. But my mom is a true pacifist.
God bless.
Mahatma Gandhi style pacifist.
Cool.
Does not believe in this. But what I would say at our family discourse, our family debates, which we're still very loving, is that like you, I believe that force is sometimes required to do good in the world. And I could cite you a bunch of examples of why, but you just
well, we know that when bad men, we know that whoever has a monopoly on violence, which is usually a central government, but we know that if that government is not for the people, by the people, and of the people, we know what happens. And those people in power will kill you. They'll kill your kids. They'll do whatever. Look, all of us, pacifists, you want to be a pacifist, awesome. The Nazis would have shot Gandhi. And I really do respect passive resistance. I've read Thoreau on civil disobedience, blah, blah, blah. I get it. But we all know that at the end of the day, if you don't have men with guns guarding those walls, I'll just... How would the pacifists have done against the Mongols? Oh, yeah, they killed everybody anyway. It doesn't matter. So I wonder, would ISIS be... I guess you could convert to Islam, but you better do what they say. Look, I mean... The bottom line is it's not realistic. And you're right. There is a time and a place for violence. There just is.
And like you, I got no problem going downrange and killing ISIS guys. Yeah. But I will say, like, as I scale back, the policy guy...
Unlike me, you've done it.
The policy guy in me also says that's what economists would call necessary but not sufficient. I also recognize that we need a whole host of other tools and elements of national power in order to really solve problems.
That's why you have rule of law.
Right. So it's not alone going to fix it, but it's a part of it.
Rule of law, Geneva Conventions, bans against cruel and unusual punishment. Courts that can... These are so important. That's why you have to have a military government must be held accountable by a civilian government. I couldn't be a bigger proponent of that. Anybody who thinks that warriors or a military, all due respect to the military, should run a country, you're out of your fucking mind. That's not what this country was founded on, for a very good reason. If you think that, you should pick up a history book, because you're not an educated human being. You're actually destructive. The founding fathers of this country is a great country because we have, and by the way, you could even make an argument that this we've got the baddest military on the planet because they're beholden to a military, to a civilian government in a lot of ways. Yeah, it's inconvenient. Yeah, sometimes the generals get pissed off. Yeah, sometimes we don't fight a great war like in Vietnam because things get in the way. Still a great idea.
Right? 100%. And I'll take it one step further. In my first platoon, I was a junior officer and I was an officer in charge, and we had like a little platoon hut structure, my unit. I used to have this phrase written on the wall, and it's the Thucydides phrase that I'm sure you've heard before, which is that any nation that draws too great a divide between its warriors and its scholars will have its fighting done by fools and its thinking done by cowards.
God, that's great.
So
I've never heard that Thucydides quote.
Yeah, it's amazing. Wow. I used to have it up in the platoon space.
Wow.
Because like...
Say it again so people can hear it. I love it.
So I'm probably going to bastardize it at least this time around. But
okay.
Any nation that draws too great a divide between its warriors and its scholars will have its fighting done by fools and its thinking done by cowards.
So good. So good, man.
So I, for myself in my own life, have always tried to embrace this duality and this idea of being a Renaissance man, that I can be both a fighter and a thinker, that I can be both a warrior and a scholar. And I think, honestly, part of the reason you and I bonded to each other at that dinner, it's like there's the initial kind of like knuckle dragging part where like me, I think you can
walk... Like my face is all scarred up from books.
Yeah, you can walk into any other room and be like...
This is from sparring yesterday. So
totally. Yeah, like I was coming from the gym this morning, right? Like we could both walk into any room and be like, okay, who's the dude in there that, like, if things go really south, right, we're gonna exfil together, right? Who's that dude? I was like, oh, I think it's that dude. I think it's that scrappy dude right there, right?
Yeah.
And so we're like, okay, hey, we should talk because, like, you know, if the zombie apocalypse comes, it's going to be me and you as,
It's very
as battle
interesting
buddies,
how-
right?
I certainly feel, I would never call myself a tough guy, but I certainly feel very comfortable around, like, I just have always been drawn to those kind of guys. I just feel more comfortable.
And we both
around.
roll and we both box,
All
right?
that
And we
stuff.
have that background, and you can just see in like somebody else's posture and
Yeah.
gait. You're like, oh, this is the guy. All the But that's not why we're friends.
No.
We're friends because we started talking and we started debating ideas and
Yeah.
we started thinking about like these really important macro issues.
Exactly.
Right.
That's sustainable.
Yeah.
We're actually having real conversations about things that matter.
Yeah.
I was really psyched to have you at that dinner because I was sitting next to you. It was fucking great. So you do this thing called The Architect, and it's about extraordinary rendition.
Yeah.
And you come out, you expose one of the guys who's one of the psychologists, which I think is great for the world. Now, what is the conclusion?
I mean, the conclusion is that was a pretty dark chapter in American history.
Yeah.
And it's
Did
important.
we get information we needed though?
Well, sort of in the Dershowitz. I'll get to my opinion on it in a second, but like sort of in the Dershowitz principle, like, hey, if we're going to engage in these behaviors and policies, let's be really transparent and let's have a robust public debate about it, and let's have an informed public debate about it.
Yeah.
So that's the conclusion. Like, look, I do think not everything. Mostly, I believe that sunshine is the best disinfectant, right? But I also come from the silent professional world, and I understand that some things have to be done in the annals of national security, and that's where
Quietly.
we need but we need good leadership and good safeguards there for it. And so I think the conclusion of The Architect is that we have to be incredibly thoughtful when we come close to those kind of red lines, and we have to ask ourselves, what are our very core and prime values, right? And I think the ultimate answer for like, did it work? Like, did we get bin Laden because we tortured KSM and he blinked when we mentioned the courier's name, you know? Look, I don't really know. What I would argue is that I don't think it matters, that probably the moral cost is greater than any small intelligence gain. The recruiting capabilities, the erosion of our moral standing in the world, when there's even the perception that we would engage in things that could be perceived as torture, are not worth the intelligence value
I think that was
of whatever we get.
I think that was bin Laden's biggest victory.
Totally.
I really do. I think his biggest victory was the ability to compromise our credibility, our moral standing in the world.
Or to engage us in 2 decades of perpetual war.
100%.
Right? Like, and you know, I always say this thing that you know, warriors are the most reluctant to go to war because we've seen the effects of it. Like,
I heard that. I remember in 2003 when it was being debated, it was the soldiers. It was Powell. It was the guys who were in uniform who were like, "Hey, you guys really want to let slip the dogs of war? You really want to do this? Because if you guys want to do this, it's going to get you." That's what I always say about people who talk loosely about violence.
right.
I mean,
The mafia understood this. They called it the unintended consequences of killing.
fuck,
Right?
100%. You should have just having some combat experience, just getting punched in the face, punching somebody else in the face with bad intention. Just that alone. Forget taking a gun and being able to look at somebody's eyes and shoot them in the face. That's a whole different thing. But you know, until and warriors have done a lot of that, and they've seen also the sort of ramifications of that, like you said, that sort of the shockwaves of you know, killing somebody and hearing their wife scream, whatever it might be. Though that's the kind of shit that a lot of these guys and especially operators deal with. It's very fucking difficult for them because war makes a mockery so often of all these linear concepts like duty, loyalty, and honor.
100%.
Right?
100%. And it twists and turns them in ways that you can't even process. Like, look, I could give you a long policy dissertation on the last 2 decades of war and the current state of talks with the Taliban in Afghanistan, right, and what's happening in Syria. But like, here's the bottom fucking line is that I was in Buds on 9/11. I was a wartime SEAL in my almost entire military service, with the exception of the Naval Academy component, has been a nation at war, and I'm just fucking tired, right? Like I've so many boxes, like so many of my friends' funerals, like even this, right? This is my friend Jonas Kelsaw, who was killed in the Extortion 17 mission. We were really good friends in the SEAL teams. And
that was when the helicopter went down with
that
those
was August 6th, 2011. Yeah, exactly.
That was supposed to be, I think Andy Stumpf was his, I think it was his
troop.
And then he got out. He got shot in the ass.
Exactly.
That was his troop, man.
Exactly. And, Andy and I, obviously, we went to high school together.
Yeah, you guys grew up in Santa Cruz.
We did.
He said, hey, what's up?
Yeah,
I love Andy.
Rivals.
I've had some long, deep conversations with that guy. He's just a great...
He's extraordinary.
Yeah.
He's really extraordinary.
I love that
guy. Yeah, it's really funny to think about. We started off like running against each other as junior lifeguards in the sand in Santa Cruz.
True?
Yeah. And then,
you guys are built kind of similar,
yeah,
too.
Totally.
You know what I mean? I could just see the competition.
Yeah. And then we ended up, in the sands of Coronado, doing stuff together. But yeah. So look, I don't have it all figured out, but like I'm like anybody else, I'm just trying to process what it means to have been part of the 2 longest wars in American history.
You now have a TV show you sold. We can't talk about who the network is, but this is a show you that's going to come out. Tell me about it. Yeah,
it's a TV series. So it's kind of an extension of my work at Vice. Where,
by the way, he'll be a Navy SEAL for 14 years. He'll then go to Harvard. Then he'll be a war correspondent. You fucking failures. All right. He'll embed himself with Boko Haram and a bunch of other shit, and then he'll expose the extraordinary rendition, and then if he wants, he'll sell a TV show. Keep going, Kaj. By the way, what kind of name is Kaj? I love it.
It's my hippie parents,
dude. Kaj Larsen with hippie parents too. All right, keep going. And blue eyes. He's the real Bradley Cooper. You're not quite as cute, but you're all right. You're all right.
It's the truth hurts.
I know, dude. Come on.
No, man, I'm like a shark. I got to keep swimming or I die. You know?
Hey, man. I hear that. You're talking to a hustler over here. I make believe for a living, and you do something else. But But so go on.
Yeah. So when I left Vice, I started producing some independent productions, and I have a bunch of projects, including this docuseries that I just sold, which is about narco trafficking. So one of the things I covered extensively at Vice, including that picture you pulled up earlier with Claire, are the drug wars in Central and South America.
Dude, so we got to get into this. I didn't know this.
Oh, yeah.
Dude.
I spent a lot of time in like Culiacan, which is the capital of Sinaloa, which is headquarters of the Sinaloa Federation.
Fucking
largest drug cartel in the world.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. I made, in that Peruvian documentary there, I made cocaine in a clandestine lab in Lima.
What?
Oh, yeah.
By the way, I looked that up. I looked up what it takes to make cocaine. That's a multi-tiered process.
Took all night.
Dude,
there's like
the number of chemicals
everywhere. Oh, yeah. The guy who was cooking it, like the cucina, like the cook guy in the kitchen, said like, if people knew how I made cocaine, they would never do cocaine.
Yeah. So you, because I want to hear all about this. I wrote this joke about how people like only drink single sourced coffee, because they want to respect the farmer.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I only do locally sourced cocaine because there's so much murder. They don't have a labor union.
Yeah.
There's a lot of blood in that cocaine.
Yeah, it's like a blood diamond.
Yeah, it's exactly like a blood diamond. So if you're doing blow a lot, and you really care about the world, you might be the ultimate hypocrite. I don't know if I'm right about that, but I might be.
I just think there's a market for conflict-free coke.
100%. Dude, 100%. Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah, I got to write that more. But so, please, please expand.
So I've covered this a lot. I covered it at CNN in a little microdoc series called Narco Wars. I covered it extensively at Vice, and I've followed the drug trade for a long time, and it's been on my radar in uniform. There's been different times that I've deployed to in the SOC South, which is Special Operations Command South, which is the area of operations that oversees Latin and Central America. So it used to be in the old days, pre 9/11, like a lot of the work of the SEAL teams was what we called CNT, counter narco trafficking. And so a lot of the funding lines for military operations were CD, counter drug lines and stuff. And so while the war on terror has obviously loomed large and dominated the majority of our time and attention and resources over the last 2 decades, there have been different times where I have been, at different SEAL units or at different briefings or involved in some of the counter narcotics work that that is done on the DoD side. And there's some really interesting interagency stuff that's happening between DoD and
Department of Defense.
Yeah, Department of Defense, the Coast Guard, DEA. I have a very close working relationship with the DEA. They were very supportive of this last series that I just did. I was one of the few DEA.
Has anybody gone to the DEA and said, hey, dude, let's legalize drugs. Maybe that's the best way to do this.
I got to say,
I want to hear your point of view on it.
Here's what I think about the DEA guys, just like from a small cultural perspective. They're kind of the last cowboy culture in law enforcement. I get along with these dudes. I was with them in Afghanistan. I've been with them in Honduras, which at one point was like the murder capital of the world. Been with them in El Salvador. Been with them in Mexico. Been with them here in the States doing operations. These are the dudes in law enforcement that I get along with that remind me of my SEAL brethren more than any other dudes.
Really?
Yeah, they're the last cowboy culture.
I would imagine.
Because they're real door kickers, these guys.
Yeah.
They got it. And they also do a lot of stuff that they don't get credit for, right? So they often white label their bus. They let the local guys take the credit, but it was really them, and that's to protect sources and informants.
I heard that's what Delta did, or someone did with Pablo Escobar. Like they were like, "There, he's over there. You guys take the credit. We'll just disappear." I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that stuff that happens in the world, and that's okay. I'm okay with it. Like,
we'll just disappear.
There's some things that just need to happen outside of the public sphere.
Of course.
But the agency guys, the DEA guys are fantastic. That being said, they are in this kind of like rolling the boulder uphill feudal battle, and they know it because these guys aren't dumb.
Of course
they're super sophisticated, but it's just a job for them, right?
Of course, they have a job to do. I mean, there's a lot of money in drug prevention as well, or at least in the illegalization. I mean, you have these giant government agencies that are all honorable people doing the best job they can. But the larger question, of course, the macro question becomes, people are going to get high. We know that. No matter what, people are going to get high. So is there any value in the idea of just make it legal, grow it here? It's like how I feel about rhino horn. Flood the market with fake rhino horn and all the rhino horns we cut off anyway. Flood the market. Just give it to everybody, and then just do big documentaries on how it doesn't get your dick hard. It's just made of keratin. Send that to China. I swear to God, people will no longer be... You can kill the market. You can kill it. But they won't do that. They harvest the horn. Like, put the horn out there.
So the key word is, you nailed it. And if I would sum up, having just done an entire docuseries on this, shot in 17 countries, including Kenya and Afghanistan and, Central America and Mexico, like all the bad spots in the world, it's a market. Like, this is a market problem. So my series looks at the economic lens of narco trafficking. So we look at the Sinaloa Federation, which is the largest drug cartel in the world, and how they operate like Apple or Walmart.
Do they?
For sure.
Explain that to me.
Okay, so let's take a farm to arm, bush to street kind of methodology with cocaine that starts in Colombia. The producers have now outsourced distribution to the Mexicans. They add value to the supply chain throughout the entire process. They have marketing arms, even in like say a place like Honduras or Salvador, right? MS-13. Mm-hmm. So all of those gangs in Central and South America are basically effectively organized labor to move product, right? Sure. And like if you think about
they're controlled by who?
By the larger cartels. Previously by the Colombian cartels, but when the Colombian cartels made the business decision to outsource distribution to the Mexicans, they gave more power to the Mexican cartels.
Okay.
So they're now running, you got the Zetas running 18 in Honduras or in Salvador.
They were kind of shut down, right?
Right.
But then
or
the problem is when you capture or kill the leaders like El Chapo, you atomize it and it creates more violence because they start fighting over turf, don't they?
Certainly. I mean, that's certainly the argument that the Mexican government has said, is that for many years they opted for kind of stability, picking their cartels. It was always implied that the Sinaloa Federation had the tacit support of the PRI, of the Mexican ruling
I'm
party.
fully in support of that.
Yeah. So to finish the metaphor, you got an MS-13 gangbanger who's running drugs for, say, Sinaloa, and he's got this massive face tattoo, like, on his face, right? If you are a drug cartel and you have organized labor in the form of gangs, what happens if the Zetas recruit one of your dudes away? Like, you can't take them to court for predatory hiring practices, right? You can only litigate in the streets, or you can slap a giant face tattoo, the ugliest face tattoo you've ever seen. Like, what is that in the language of business? That's a non-compete clause, right? When you got a 13 on your forehead.
That's what it is.
Yeah, you're not going to work for 18 for 18.
No,
right?
you're not.
So all of this stuff that you
so
see when you think about it from an economic lens, from a business, when we use the language of business, the drug trade reveals itself to be what it actually is, which is a commodities trade. And in the history of commodities trades, where you have demand, we've never really been able to effectively ban a commodities trade. Well, the only thing we've ever been able to do is like legalize tax and regulate it.
Tax it, yeah.
Yeah, so the macro
Commodities,
indicator
for
of the
you guys
series.
Don't know, is like cotton and wheat and the kind of product that you
Exactly. So, that's after studying this for so many years and so many months, that's where the conclusion seems to push towards. And then there's just the like, holy shit, we spent so many billions of dollars, right? 60,000 people dead in Mexico. And what's happened to the supply side of the curve? Just keeps going up, man.
Of course.
Keeps going up.
Of course.
And not, we have a heroin episode too, like not to be too down, but 72,000 people, are going to die of opioid overdoses this year.
That's real people, man. That's
Right.
people's children.
That's Americans, 72,000 Americans.
Yes, 72,000 Americans. So can you imagine if so how many people were killed in 9/11? Well, I think it was 3,000 almost.
Yeah.
72,000.
Right.
It laughs. It's a joke compared to that. It's like it dwarfs anything that's ever happened to us terrorist-wise.
Exactly. So just like intuitively, like you don't got to be like a Harvard policy nerd to feel like this shit isn't working.
Yeah.
And that we got to find an alternative path.
Everybody has to know that. I mean, sort of.
Yeah.
But,
Anyway. Yeah.
we need a bad guy.
Yeah. I feel like, okay, we talked about torture. We talked about drugs.
I'm loving
We
this.
talked about war and conflict.
Yeah, but it's really important, cool shit. Like that, you're a fascinating dude, man.
Tell your audience to like put the razor blades away. I feel bad. This is like slit your wrist podcasting.
I don't think so, dude.
Right.
I think it's really interesting because you're a guy that's been at the tip of the spear. You've been involved. You're there with your feet dirty and hands dirty. That's a big deal. And did you get to know any drug cartel people?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, making cocaine in that clandestine lab in the slums of Lima, like, I like those dudes. Like,
Yeah.
So I got to know a lot of them at many different stages of the process. And,
Is Lima a dangerous place for a foreigner to go, like myself?
No, Lima's an awesome place. Food's great. You can
What about
surf right out there.
Medellin or Cartagena?
Medellin, well, Colombia has become very safe, right? It used to be that you couldn't drive from Bogota to Medellin, right?
Right.
Now you can. The whole
Why?
country, especially mostly because of the peace process with the FARC, has made Colombia not only, like, Colombia's a gorgeous country and super safe now.
But Mexico's very dangerous.
Mexico's dangerous, although I will say that, broadly speaking, the drug violence has been contained to people involved in the trade. It hasn't really, except for a very few like small examples, leaked out into, say, the tourist industry or anything.
But you
like that.
hear about these stories like where the Zetas were killing busloads of migrants. I mean, and kids and stuff. Like, what the fuck is that about?
Yeah.
Like, what that brutality?
It's definitely happened, and their control for the plaza or like a particular territory for distributing and transporting drugs has been vicious and brutal, without a doubt. There's this whole thing about the lost women of Ciudad Juarez, right? Like a ton of women who have gone missing.
Really?
Yeah, and you know, the other thing to understand about cartels through the language of business is that, like any good, they're multinational corporations, right?
Yeah.
Like, but they're not singular in their product or their organizational structure or their
The Lost
business
Women
design.
sounds like the work of a couple serial killers who are organized. That's what it sounds like to me.
I think like the leading theory has been that it's been about human trafficking for the sex industry, both like across the border and stuff. There might also be that like some component, but in general, what it signals is that the cartels have diversified as well in their business model. So they're in everything.
Yeah, this narco guy on Rogan who wrote a book was talking
Grillo?
about
Was it Grillo? Is that who it was? Yeah, he's great. His stuff's great. Essential research for a guy like me.
Yeah. Really wild guy. Talking about how they're into oil, stealing oil and everything.
That's a big deal. There's a lot of revenue coming that way because they're smart businessmen.
They're smart businessmen.
Yeah.
Yeah. The question is, it just seems like as I get older, again, another issue where you can't shoot or bomb your way out of this problem. You just can't.
Well put.
Ain't that crazy? And so are we evolving? Are we learning? And as we learn, like, where do we go from here? You know, that's what's fascinating to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you're kind of at the forefront of this. You're bringing it to us.
I am like, look, I don't know what I'm doing.
No, but you got this TV show.
I got this TV show. I mean, what I am doing is what I think when I think about my generation of veterans, and I think about, you know, the World War II generation of veterans, which came back from World War II and built this country into the greatest economic engine the world's ever seen, right? Mm-hmm. And we were given so much prosperity because of their efforts and of that generation, the greatest generation. And then Vietnam happened, and it was an utter disaster reintegrating veterans back into society. There was a point, I did another doc about veterans in prison and how they're showing up in higher numbers now. But we should have known all of this because, you know, post-Vietnam, 1 in 5 incarcerated Americans was a Vietnam veteran.
I didn't know
There
that.
was a long precedent for this. And of course, it makes sense because they come back, they're all fucked up from war, right? They like self-medicate, like all of this stuff. Their economic opportunities aren't there. And especially post-Vietnam, it was really bad. And I like to say that the battle for this generation of veterans is still up for grabs. Mm-hmm. We could be considered like the post-Vietnam generation as this like PTSD laden, you know, generation that comes back and ends up in prison, and like we're dealing with the opioid crisis and like 22 suicides a day. Yeah. All of that shit is really real. A lot of
your brethren, a lot of your JSOC guys,
tons
who are doing most of the fighting.
It's a huge issue and it's really real, but it's not the only model. There's an alternative model. The alternative model is guys coming back like that generation from World War II and reintegrating into society and continuing to add value, continuing to serve, just add a uniform. And if my generation of veterans does that effectively, then we'll be like those World War II guys. We can then be the next greatest generation of veterans. So
that's a good idea.
When I think about what I'm doing, like I'm just trying to continue my service and keep moving like the shark, keep swimming like the shark, and do as much as possible to continue to contribute.
That's fucking awesome, man. It's just so great. And did you, when you were doing this narco thing, you had cameras with a lot of, you were around you know, dudes who didn't want to be seen.
Yeah, that's the hard part about being a TV journalist, right? Like these print guys like Grillo, I mean, I'm joking, like he's a great journalist. Like those dudes got it so easy, right? Like I got to have like a C300 on my shoulder, right? Which basically says shoot me, right?
Yeah.
And you want to hear this is crazy. You'll appreciate this as a media guy. You want to know like one of the dumbest things I've ever seen in media is, are you familiar with the red camera, like the red epics and all that stuff? Have you seen what they like label all those, like their little nicknames? They all say like bomb, like the red bomb on the right side and stuff. Yeah. So like, I'm like, I'll go into like an interview with like maybe a not so sophisticated like Boko guy or a not so sophisticated cartel guy. Yeah. And like the only word in English that he probably knows is bomb. Right. He's like, this dude's going to kill me. Right. Yeah. It's already a sketchy situation. Yeah. I think they've stopped that practice, but for years, like they
were you more nervous with Boko Haram or more nervous with the cartel guys?
Boko Haram.
Really?
Hands down. Yeah.
Why? Who are these guys in this picture?
Oh, so these are the Peruvian special forces. They're known as the Sinches, and
look like a rough bunch.
They are a unit devoted completely to counter narcotics. Basically.
Is that guy that big, or is that just the camera angle?
I don't think he's that big. The Peruvians in general they're not the Dutch. I'll say that. Yeah, I think he's bowed out. But yeah, we were blowing up what are called pistas here, clandestine landing strips for the drug cartels.
Oh, wow.
So it was actually really great. I was helping them. I wasn't helping. I was advising them on how to wire some of the charges because I knew a little bit about this demolition thing.
Well,
I was helping. You're playing
all different kinds. We should. I wonder if we should edit that out. I
don't care. Like, look, I have never been comfortable with the traditional label of journalist, right? I got in a big fight when I was at CNN, when I was covering the floods in Pakistan. Like a fifth of the country was underwater from these massive floods. And I was there doing humanitarian operations and covering them and doing a story about them. But like the helicopters would land, and all these desperate villagers who hadn't had access to food or medical supplies for weeks, they'd have 30 seconds while the bird touched down before they had to go to the next spot, like very strict parameters for time windows. And I had a cameraman, right? And here I am. I could never just be the kind of journalist like holding a stick mic in my hand, doing nothing. The hardest thing about transitioning from the SEAL teams to media is I felt like I went from being the man in the arena to the man covering the man in the arena. And I didn't like that feeling. So when I was at CNN, like, I picked up bags of rice and I threw them like out the back door because I also think my reporting is fundamentally better and I help people understand what's really happening.
Do you remember that story about the guy in Somalia who took the pictures of the starving man, or maybe it was a child, and there was a vulture behind him?
Oh, shit. Yeah.
Remember that?
I could never do that kind of journalism.
And he ended up taking pictures. There was a child that was starving, and the food tent was just over there, and he chose to take pictures, and the vulture was behind this child. The child was dying. And rather than take the child and bring him to the food depot, he just documented this case. He ended up killing himself, I think, shortly after.
Actually, that's a much better example. I'm going to steal that. You patent that one, IP? Yeah. No, I could never do that shit because like I'm more in the George Plimpton school of journalism, which is a obscure, dated reference, right? That's old school, right? But like this dude wanted to write about the NFL, so he joined. He boxed. Yeah. Like he got in the arena. He like punched it out. And so if you want like clean, pure, traditional, objective, what I would call vulture journalism based on your last anecdote, like that's not me.
But I trust your journalism.
I'm the dude who's going to mix it up.
I trust that so much more because you're coming into contact with objective reality. You're right there up close and personal, and you've done a lot of stuff. You've been on both sides of the doing. And so for me, that's a perspective that has layers that you're just not going to get when you're a traditional journalist. This is all part of this changing world we're in, where anything traditional is just, look at where journalism is. Look at where these publications are. Half the people don't even trust them. I don't even trust the shit on my phone. I get this fucking news feed and I'm like, well, I'll take all of that with a grain of salt. It used to be I believed all that shit, but I'll take it all with a grain of salt because then I get a guy like you on and I'm like, this is what's really going on. Like, how many people actually do, that's what's great about podcasts, what's great about Vice, jumped on this, that's what's great about this show now you're doing, is the idea that you can see a series on the real issues, the real problems behind drug trafficking and shit, like the economy. A lot of it, when I hear you talk about this, like, it kind of brings you not only closer to the problem, but you identify more with it. They're not those bad guys over there. They're guys trying to get from point A to point B, and they're taking shortcuts. But it makes sense that the Sinaloa cartel is run by Apple. because that's the fastest way and most efficient way to move product. And it's a market, and you're trying to make money.
Exactly.
So
exactly, and I agree. My friend Amaryllis Fox, who did this new series with me, she was a case officer at the agency. Totally brilliant. One of the smartest people
the agency being
I know.
CIA, everybody.
That one. Sorry. Yeah, I forgot we're in Hollywood.
Come on, dude.
Yeah, not UTA.
bro.
My agency.
Bro,
yeah.
The agency.
They're great. Also,
Whenever they say the
Yeah.
agency, they say the CIA.
I could have.
And by the way, CAG.
Yeah.
That's Delta Force.
Yeah, I could have even been more secret squirrel. I could have said the company. You know?
Yes. Yes.
My friend Amaryllis from the company, you know, right? So my friend Amaryllis who was a case officer at the Central Intelligence Agency, who did this new drug series, narco trafficking series with me. This is one of her fundamental points, and she actually did this video for like Al Jazeera or something where they interviewed her called "Listening to Your Enemy," and she said, "Hey, my job as an
That's
intelligence
her?
officer."
That's her?
That's Emma. Yeah.
I mean, what's with these women? They're like the hottest. Like were they models before this? What the fuck is going on here?
I can't wait till she
What
hears
the fuck
that.
is going on? And she was who? She worked at the agency.
This woman is one of the most incredible women you'll ever
I
meet
agree.
in your entire life.
I agree. Are you fucking out of your mind? She was a case officer?
She was a case officer. Not only was she a case officer, not to go too deep into agency like logistics, but she was a knock, right? So she was non-official cover. So the way intelligence training works is you go to the farm, which is where you're trained. If you're on the DO side, the Directorate of Operations, the spies, if you're on the spy side, not the analyst side, not the techie side, but if you're on the spy side, you go to the farm, you get trained to be an intelligence officer. 80% of the people who graduate from the farm go to an embassy where they're under official cover. They work for the State Department, technically. They're in an African embassy to do their first tour. They're recruiting sources. But they take a very few people from each class and they make them what's called a NOC, non-official cover. Nothing to do with the embassy. Like, they have their own cover story. They're way outside of the official thing. So Emma was a NOC.
And her name is Amaryllis Fox.
Yeah.
Dude.
I don't want to burst your bubble. Like, her name may now be Amaryllis Fox Kennedy. She may have hyphenated it because she just got married. Yeah.
Let me see her husband. Bring him up right fucking now.
He's my buddy, so you can't knock him.
Shit, who he is. I want to fight him right now in an open field.
That's not him.
There's a picture of their wedding.
He's a stud. That's a good looking kid.
He is a really good looking kid.
Well, of course he is. Of course he's a good looking dude. Look, is he a big guy? Is he athletic?
He's not athletic. He's really intelligent. I mean,
there he is. All right.
He's Bobby Kennedy's grandson.
Oh, I think I've met him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually met him.
He's a Malibu guy.
Oh,
he's in our circle.
Yeah, I've met him because I did something for Bobby Kennedy, so I've met him. He's a good guy.
He's a great guy. He's a great guy.
Yeah, he's a good kid. All right.
I couldn't be happier.
That's awesome.
They just had a baby. I'm like smiling ear to ear.
That's great.
Yeah,
okay, he's good people. Yeah, he was very cool to me. In fact,
he's great.
And he's got a brother too. Two of them.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Good guys.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, Kennedys are a complicated family.
They're a complicated family, but they're good guys, and there's stuff going on. But anyway, they're
patriots.
So Amaryllis Fox. Kennedy.
One of my best friends.
Okay.
And she was part of the series, and her whole conceit is that you have to listen to your enemy, and if you watch this video that she did, it's only like 5 minutes long or whatever, you'll see her discussing how she did that to recruit her sources, and it's pretty brilliant.
Wow. You have to listen to your enemy. What a life. What an amazing sort of, that sounds fascinating to me.
It is.
I mean, what an outlier she is. What an outlier.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
What was it? Do you know what it was about her that got her to do something that so few people do and be effective at it?
I don't. I mean, her background is extraordinary. Her intelligence and acumen is second to none. Like nobody I've ever met.
Really?
Oh yeah. I love even when we go out at night, I love how she's got this quiet strength in that she can dominate a room. She just somehow, like, women like kind of gravitate to the left of her, like men kind of gravitate
she's a
to
matriarch.
the right of her.
Yeah.
And she has inner strength, confidence, and power, which is incredible. And people recognize that.
As an undercover CIA officer, she was in the thick of it. She was in these places doing like the kind of intelligence work that we see in movies.
Yeah, you'll hear more about her. She's going to be a big star. I'll introduce you guys. You'll dig her.
Let's get her on the podcast.
You should. She's brilliant. I'm just like an old school Paleolithic knuckle dragger. Amarillo is brilliant.
You're falsely modest, but I appreciate that. And I know. I mean, listen.
One knuckle dragger to another.
No, dude, I love it. I love complicated people, which is what you are in the best way. Dude, thanks for coming on, man.
This was epic. Look at this comfortable studio.
Dude, I took over for Shab. Really fascinating, man. Really
I'm a huge Shab fan.
He's the best.
Yeah,
That's my brother. It's my fucking brother.
Yeah,
he's literally lost his voice. He goes, dude, I can't speak.
That's amazing.
I go, well, I'll take it from here. He goes, really? Can you do solo? I go, yeah, it's raining. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So that guy needs to take a break. Nobody burns it. Nobody burns it at both ends like Shab.
Really?
Yeah, he's got to relax. You know what I mean? Well, this is The Fighter and the Kid with Kaj Larsen, Navy SEAL, war correspondent, TV producer, TV creator, surfer, and barrel-chested man who's impervious to the cold and fear. We're out.
Yeah. That's what I'm just gonna record that for my answering service. The last 10 seconds, like when people call me, that's what it's gonna be.
Dude, that was so good. Yes, you should.
That was amazing.
Is my face all marked up? Am I gonna look like an asshole on camera? Or
Can't really see it.
Oh, okay,
it's good. It's good. We didn't do current events. I don't know if you guys even need it for today's episode since it's different. But if you guys want to, we can do it.
What do we got for current events? Let's go through it before we
see it real quick.
Can you splice in the part where I?
Of course, anything you want. Yeah.
And then you guys can even talk about that.
Just give me a little brief, like.
We're just
we just go over stories.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Internet. So I'll just splice this in somehow. Cool.
Oh yeah.
Hold on. I love this shit. Corey Feldman defends Michael Jackson after leaving Neverland. Says singer never touched me inappropriately. This guy is always looking for attention. Corey Feldman. He's such a mess. By the way. I haven't seen Leaving Neverland, but I had some people hit me up on DMs because I went hard in the paint about the accusers not coming forward when they could have. But one of them was 15. So I don't know, and I don't know enough about this, but then I talked to a really well-known songwriter who's a famous songwriter who knows a lot of people in the business, including all the people around him. And he goes, there is no doubt in my mind. And then you look at the details of Michael Jackson. Hey, bro. What were you doing hanging out with 8-year-old kids, and why were you separating the parents, and why were you staying in a hotel room with them and all that stuff? What the fuck is really going on? So I have to assume, I haven't seen Leaving Neverland, I have to assume that there's something fishy going on, that maybe this motherfucker was a true pedophile.
You never know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But Corey Feldman is coming out saying the memories were fun. Maybe they were. You know?
Well, Corey Feldman is one of a couple celebrities who hung out with Michael Jackson when they were younger, who said that they've personally never had anything weird happen with Michael. It seems to be a select few kids who've had that experience, and then a couple others who haven't. Like, I think Macaulay Culkin, also a child that hung out with Michael Jackson quite a bit when he was doing his Home Alone stage of life. He didn't get anything. He's actually the godfather of Paris Jackson. And so it seems like he's saying that there's nothing, he's not saying that these things didn't happen, just that they didn't happen to him.
We know that Paris Jackson and his other kid, we know that they're not his biological children, right?
Isn't it his semen or something?
Wait, what?
No, apparently it's not. Apparently
we don't know.
No, apparently, according to this very famous musician I was talking to, who he was like, no,
oh,
it's
like
not.
secrets.
Well, no, it's the father. The sperm belongs to what's his name? He's a dermatologist, or I think he's a dermatologist. So it's not his biological kids, because Michael Jackson was black, and his kids are, Why are Michael Jackson's kids white?
There's also a rumor that his father castrated him when he was younger in order to keep his voice so high.
Yeah.
So would he be able to impregnate people if that
So
was
anyway,
the
apparently
case?
these were not his biological children because she's white, guys. She's not black.
That's her?
Yeah, that's the daughter.
She's a white girl. Okay?
She looks pretty white.
That's a white girl. That's not a black girl. Michael Jackson was a black man. So that's a white girl. I love how people just don't want to they don't want to see what's really going on. And doesn't mean that he didn't love her, and doesn't mean she doesn't consider him her father, and doesn't mean that it's not his daughter for all intents and purposes. I don't mean to but just interesting to me.
The doc is 4 hours long.
I got to see
What?
Yeah, it was at Sundance, and I was there for the other film, and people went to see it. Apparently, most of the people left after the 2-hour intermission, not because it was bad. They said it's
Too
from
long,
a film
right?
perspective. These are all like film nerds, right? They said it's excellent, but they said no, I just couldn't listen to another 2 hours about MJ molesting.
Oh,
these
that's
people.
why. Okay.
They
that
were
makes sense.
tortured by it.
By the way, one of his
4
kids'
hours,
name is
jeez.
Blanket. So,
What?
all right. That's what I have to say. Ready? All right.
I believe Blanket was the one that he held outside of the window, infamously.
Dude, I was at yeah. Oh yeah, maybe. Okay. I was at Soho House. There are an extraordinary number of people in this town I'd like to punch in the face just because of they're just too buttoned down. They're just too happy with their haircuts. And I'm talking about the guys.
That's why I'm a member, bro.
Dude,
so I can go there and be angry.
Hey, listen, there are a lot of effective people there, but yeah, okay. Well, yeah. I don't think they have Michael's DNA, but that's okay. Who cares? Those were kids.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh, this
What
is
happened?
bizarre.
It's tough for them. How about that? How about it's tough for those kids in a lot of ways. It ain't easy. All right.
Next one?
Yeah.
All right. Boom.
So the second man ever who has HIV is currently in remission and is off of medication for, I believe, 1.5 years. And where he had the same type of treatment that the first guy who was cured of HIV had. It's a special
It's the bone
stem
marrow,
cell.
right?
Yeah, he had a bone. They both had, I think, leukemia, and they had a bone marrow transplant. And so, there's a protein that I guess the HIV virus uses to enter the cell, and there's a mutation of that protein called like CF65 or something. And when you have that mutation, you are HIV resistant. But this is incredible to me because at 52, I remember when AIDS was a death sentence, and I had people I knew fairly well who died of this disease and saw it up close and personal. And it was such a terrifying disease because you died of starvation, actually. You had horrible lesions on your face, and you had just a system-wide attack. It was such a shitty way to go. And it was a death sentence, and you'd get it, and you'd be HIV positive, and you would have to just wait until the inevitable happened. You'd start getting colds and flus that would never go away, and then skin things and all kinds of awful stuff. Your body couldn't take food. It was just the worst thing in the world. So this is incredible to me. We cured Hep C, and we might be on the verge of curing AIDS. That's not putting it in remission, but curing it. That's incredible.
Amazing.
It is incredible.
So anybody who has a problem with Western medicine, and you think that all doctors and the medical industry and big pharma is just all bad, go fuck yourself and go into a lab, because now there are a lot of private labs that are working really hard and coming up with ways to solve these problems because there's a lot of money in it. So this is where the marketplace is doing a great job.
By the way, straight out of Africa. So HIV is one of these diseases that emerged from the Congo River Basin, at some point jumped the air gap between humans and animals.
People eating monkeys or whatever, right?
Yeah. So I was in Liberia covering the Ebola crisis, and same thing. It was like how it jumps the air gap, and epidemiologists who are miracle workers have traced. Not only did they trace the epidemiology of the Ebola outbreak in West Africa and Liberia the last time around, but they've done incredible stuff around HIV and patient zero with HIV. Apparently a flight attendant flying around the world.
That's right.
Watched the outbreaks go. So it's amazing that we are on the cusp of controlling that.
You've seen some shit. West Africa and the Ebola, you just go to the craziest places. You've seen some shit, dude.
I met this dude, he calls himself the virus hunter. He goes deep in the jungles looking for the next HIV and Ebola. He's wild. That dude's crazy.
I'm so jealous of the way you live your life. I love my life, but you're a bad motherfucker, dude. He just goes to Liberia, By the way, how about that country?
Oh my
How about
God.
that disaster?
Liberia is unbelievable.
Thank you, Charles Taylor and Fode Sanko.
Yeah,
over in Sierra Leone.
They still love Charles. There's a lot of Charles Taylor loyalists. I was there in uniform also, training the Liberian Special Forces. Which was one of the best things ever. I was there to teach them combat diving, right? Very like esoteric art of warfare. And I showed up and they had this like brand new dive facility that the Israelis had built them, perfect equipment, never even been opened, still had like the tags on it. And I was like, oh, okay, like where's the pool? We'll start our combat diving training. And they're like, oh, well, this way. And we ran to like this lake. And I was like, this is the pool? They're like, oh yeah, we don't have a pool. So they wanted me to like build a combat diving program.
Are there any crocodiles in that
there was
lake?
Definitely fucking crocodiles in the lake, but it didn't matter because the Liberian dudes that I was supposed to teach combat diving to didn't know how to swim. So I basically like taught them like the only thing I did for my 6 weeks there was teach them like a little bit of swimming in the lake, and that's
Fucking fuck that. You don't go into a lake in Liberia. There are crocodiles. It's not like an agency that keeps it crocodile free. No, you don't get into a lake in
Doesn't
Africa.
exist,
Did you get in the lake in Africa?
Yeah, we got in the lake. Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
They told me there was no crocodiles.
Well, they don't fucking know. They're not crocodileologists. All right, man. You're reckless. I got to have a talk with you. You're being too reckless. All right. And you got Ebola and crocodiles. Fucking Kaj. All right.
Next one?
I think I just called him Andy.
Gosh. All right, so this is going viral right now. It was posted by SportsCenter.
By the way,
what's up?
yeah, because take a look at how fast he is.
This is ridiculous,
Still.
right? But they reposted it from a boxing official Instagram handle, and they put down that he was still 52 and able to do this, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's not that far off, but this is when he was filming a movie for Steven Seagal. And it was like, the movie came out in 2017, so this is probably around 2016-ish time,
Whatever.
which is still amazing,
Whatever.
right?
It also means that Mike Tyson will kick your ass.
This is incredibly fast. Yeah, it's freaking amazing.
How about that, guys?
Look at his hand speed.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
You want to fuck around? Yeah. That's Mike Tyson. Like David Blaine tells me this hilarious story about how he wanted to see if he could last 3 rounds with Mike Tyson. So David Blaine started training. David Blaine's never boxed in his life. And he went to, I think it was Teddy Atlas. And he goes, I want to try to last 3 rounds. And Teddy Atlas, someone was like, what's the trick? And he goes, there's no trick. I just want to get good enough. And he goes, well, that's not going to happen in this lifetime. And he couldn't get anybody to do it. Like every trainer was like, no, you're not. That's not possible, bro. You can never do that. You will never do that. So he didn't understand boxing or like, combat. So he trained for 9 months and he found a guy, he gave him like $100,000 and he got into the ring with, David, I'm sorry if I'm butchering the story, but he got into the ring and with a cruiserweight who was like just a good kind of semi-good professional. And David said he got jabbed once and he went, holy shit. And then he goes, all right, just get up. He fell down. He goes, get up, try it again. He gets jabbed again. He goes, oh, fuck. He took the headgear off on his gloves. He goes, I can't do this. He goes, we've been telling you that the whole time. That was a jab. He goes, that was a cruiserweight. If Mike Tyson decided to hit you, this was back in like 2003 or something. He goes, you would be, it would take one exchange. And guys who have never done that with a real pro don't understand that. It's what I go back to. It's like, do you think you're a tough guy? You're not. You're not. You're just not. Sorry.
Oh my God, I love that story.
I mean, bop! Like when you get jabbed by a large cruiserweight, some dude who's, 6'2" and walks around at 215 but sucks down to 188. Do you know how hard he's going to jab? Do you know what happens to your face when you're a regular? And I'll tell you what, I'll give you headgear and I'll give you a bar. Go ahead. No problem. See what happens. You're going to go out. It's a good chance you're going to knock the fuck out. But you're definitely not going to want to fight again. You're going to get hit that hard with a jab. Forget a right. It's a nightmare. People don't realize how hard those guys who've been throwing a right hand their whole life. It's a different thing. I'm moving around with Wayne McCulloch, who's 5'6", 135. I have no business doing it. But yesterday we're fucking around, and I don't have my headgear on. I'm trying to do this like this pattern and stuff like that. And it gets, you know, we start moving around. He's hitting me. He's just like he's just doing that. But my face is all marked up, and I'm fucking like, if he had started opening it up, at one point he dug into my ribs, but he just got under my elbow a little bit, and I was like, oh, that's a disaster. And he was being nice. That's a 135-pound man. Good luck with a guy who's fucking anything over 160. You're going to sleep.
Yeah. I don't think age to a degree is the limiting factor. Randy Couture, right?
He'll kill you.
Yeah, look at him. Look at the
kill
size of
you.
him. Yeah.
You
Even
know-
Chuck, like I'm buddies with Chuck, and Chuck's broken, he's hurt.
Yeah.
But like he hits hard.
Yeah.
He hits
for a
damn
guy like
hard.
me?
Yeah.
Whoa, hey, Bryan, what do you do? Box? Shut up. I wrestled in high school. What? Shut up. You know, no, it's different. It's a very different thing. Yeah.
Another one?
Yeah.
All right, this is becoming a weird trend, but parents are throwing cheese at their babies' faces.
Oh, yeah.
Because of this one video that actually went viral. I'll show you this one.
Crack me up.
It's just.
Oh my God.
So it seems harmless, right?
Yeah, it's funny. Problem is you can hit
But
the
yeah,
kid.
but all these parents are doing it now, and I guess people are starting to like say, "Is this not cool to do?"
I mean, you know, it's iffy.
It is iffy, right?
Fine.
It's borderline?
I would do it. It's all good. You know what? You get
I mean,
smacked in the face.
don't
with
you
cheese.
fuck with your kids?
If you want
right?
your kid to grow up like Kaj Larsen, then hit him in the face with cheese. If not, then baby and coddle him. Because I guarantee Kaj has had a lot of cheese on his face. That's fucking hilarious.
They have no idea what's going on.
And by the way, it's delicious.
Yeah, and I think this girl just caught it on her face and started eating it.
Catch it.
Yeah, just started eating it.
Ah!
Anyways, there's just a bunch of those.
It's hilarious.
One more?
Yeah.
How about this? This is not that current. It's like a week or two. But once again, a Chinese person threw coins into a jet engine for good luck. This is like the third time it's happened.
Can't do that.
And
Yeah.
this guy's being sued. He's only 28 years old, so he should know better by now.
Yeah, you got to know better than that, dude.
He's also taking a ton of rhino horn. You know,
He's
like,
taking a lot of rhino horn. So he had a heart on as well.
yeah.
Because that shit works. I don't care what the scientists say.
Right.
Every time I ingest rhino horn, man, I can fuck all night. Yeah. Look at that.
Yep. I can't believe it's still happening.
Good fortune coins into
The older people I understand. The other ones like grandmas, like they're just old thinking.
Yeah, they're not
Yeah,
really.
but this guy's 28.
They're not on Google.
So he's getting sued by them.
This is like the shit that wins the Darwin Award, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah.
The Darwin Awards are great. It was like two guys who held a rattlesnake down with a loaded shotgun, with the butt end of a loaded shotgun, and the rattlesnake wrapped its, you know,
Oh, and then
and it just pulled the trigger and blew the fucking guy's head off.
Although, truth be told, if there was social media when you and I were growing up, we probably would have been eligible for a few Darwins.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I did a lot of dumb shit. And I came to the party thinking I knew all the, you know, there's certain truths that you think are, and you're like, no, that's not true. Like piranhas. I thought piranhas actually ate people when you swam among them. They don't. I also believed in that thing that swims up your
the dick
urethra
fish.
doesn't exist.
It's not true?
No, it's bullshit. It's never
you
happened.
sure?
It's legend, but it's
I don't know.
no. It
Thank
doesn't,
God.
It doesn't swim up your stream.
Well, it doesn't swim up your pee
Your
stream
urethra.
and open barbs in your dick. That's not true. That's folklore. And piranhas, when you're swimming among them, don't skeletonize you. They don't do that.
This is great news because I always wanted to either surf that river wave in the Amazon that people do, or I've always, only one dude has ever swam the Panama Canal from the Pacific from the Atlantic to the Pacific side. I always wanted to do that.
There might be some crocodiles, but they're American
I've heard about
crocodiles.
the
But I don't know if
they're
you
not
wanna fuck
Liberian
around.
crocodiles.
They're not
That's fine.
They're not the Nile crocodiles or the saltwater crocodiles, but you don't want to fuck around with crocs. I would be worried about that, but I think the Amazon only has caiman. I don't think they have crocs.
The Panama Canal definitely has crocs because I've seen them in there.
go.
So I know that's a little harder. But I was less worried about the crocs and more worried about the mythological fish. I was like, am I going to have to swim this thing with a condom on?
You're fine.
Okay. that's
Swim
good
with a
news.
condom on anyway. You can probably get chlamydia.
Right.
The fucking water's dirty. Is that it?
Do you want this one? Are you good?
Fuck yeah, I do.
All right. So I guess Hillary Clinton says she's not running in 2020. Right?
Because
And
guess
then-
what? It didn't work in 08 and it didn't work in fucking Like, give it up.
But look at how they're tweeting to each other, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. So Donald Trump tweets this. You want to read it or want me to read it?
Crooked Hillary confirms she will not run in 2020. Rules out a third bid for the White House. Aw, shucks. Does that mean I won't get to run against her? She will be sorely missed.
The president of the United States. And then she does a meme of Mean Girls on her Twitter. Why are you so obsessed with me? How crazy is this?
Well, she's got people doing this, but I love it.
But still, it's amazing.
No, it's not. It's so. This is not about politics. I fucking hate Twitter. I know you're huge on Twitter. I know you're.
I can't. I
hate
can't
Twitter.
stand all of it.
It's mean. It's a bad place.
It sucks. It's worse than the war. It's worse than the war zones you've been in.
Seriously,
I mean,
it is. There's a lot more frag incoming. I'll tell you that.
It's all about fucking destruction. Yeah. It's not about anything other than destruction. It's just gossip, bullshit, tribal horseshit, and people are just like, fuck off.
In the immortal words of Stewart, it's bad for America.
Damn right, brother. It's bad for America. It's bad for us.
That's it.
Kaj Larsen. We should keep all of this.
Yeah, for sure.
Kaj is finally, we did our, I'm looking at Bella Hadid's tiny white tank top right there.
Oh.
Bring that up just because I need to
for
make
the
sure
hell of
everything's
it?
all right. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I appreciate that. That's a good look. I really do. It's a fantastic look. Kaj, I'm going to go home and yank my pud to that image. And I want to thank you, brother, for don't, it's that, it is a war zone, but don't capture that on your camera. Thank you, Kaj Larsen.
Thanks,
for joining the Fighter and the Kid, the mother of all podcasts. This is the Fighter and the Kid. We're out. That was fucking great.
It's so fun.